Yep. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk real quick about the markers. Clean this up. So distress markers, we released these at the winter show. They've been really, really popular, which I love that they're so popular, but there's still quite a bit of things that people need to know about them that I think is really important. So let me take some different papers just so I have a couple samples of it. When you work with these markers, these of course are going to be water-based inks. So these are not a solvent coloring system. This is water-based. It is a different ink than the other distress products, but it is designed to be compatible. When you're working with this, a lot of people ask me questions. They say, you know, I'm having trouble blending my colors. First thing you have to understand is that different papers are going to work totally different ways. So if you're having trouble blending the ink, it's usually because of the paper you're trying to blend it on, okay? So for example, I'll show you a tag. I'll work with gloss paper. I'll work with specialty stamping. You can even work with watercolor paper if you want. So if I go in and take a color, let's take pine needles for example. It's a deep color. And I'll go on manila, I'll go on gloss, I'll go on specialty stamping. It is reactive with water. So if I go in and spray it on manila, you're going to see that the color starts to wick. Specialty stamping, the color starts to wick. Gloss paper, the color doesn't do anything. And you would think on gloss paper, it would run more than anything, but it isn't, because gloss paper is incredibly porous. So different papers are going to give up more ink than others. So when you're trying to blend with water and you're saying, okay, this ink isn't going, you need to try another paper. And that's why watercolor paper is so critical for watercolor, because it's designed to allow you to kind of float those inks and blend without pulling apart the paper, okay? Now, when you work with these markers, here's some good kind of housekeeping things, or things that you should know about them. First of all, because it is a double tip marker, there's some really cool things about it. Let's pick this one up. So one side, of course, is going to be our brush tip. It's going to be a nice paint brush. The other side, going to be a fine detail, and the fine detailed nib is not going to wear out because it is plastic. But let's go back to our brush tip. Sometimes when we're working with this brush tip and we're coloring on stamps or we're doing a lot of blending, you might wear this down. You might fray the nib a bit, depending on the surface that you work on. All you need to do is take a paper towel, grab this nib, pull it out of the marker, flip it over, and it's a brand new brush nib on the other end. So it's a dual tip brush nib. So sometimes it'll happen, you know. We don't have replacement nibs because pretty much by the time you wear down your nib, you're out of ink. But something can happen, you know. You could be coloring something, maybe you catch the end of chipboard or something, you're like, oh, pull it out, flip it over, so you'll have another shot at it. Another thing when you're working with these markers is that at a glance you'll know if the marker cap is on, because if it's got a black band, it just means the cap isn't on all the way. So even though you're working with them, if you're kind of coloring really quick and you put the cap back on and you lay it there and you're ready to scoop them all up and put them away, if you see that little black band, you're like, okay, wait, cap's not on all the way. The markers can be stored standing up or laying down. It's up to you. So if you have a set and you have the canister, you can store them this way, but if you store them sideways, that's why I designed the hex lid, so it's not going to roll off the table. Now let's talk blending, because as much as I love to blend with water, not everybody loves watercolor, I get that. So here are some things to know about blending 101. If I go in and let's say I'm going to work with a light color. Let's take tumbled glass. It could be tumbled glass or spun sugar, anything like that. If I go and work with this, you have that nice light color. Let's say I wanted to create a little bit of a shadow. So I can go in, say chip sapphire, and swipe that on there, and I can pick up that color, and I can get that dark blue color. But as I continue to color and blend, it's always going to go back to my lightest color. In other words, it's never going to contaminate the marker. It'll always go back to tumbled glass. If you don't own all the colors of markers, maybe I want to create a new color. Maybe I want to go in with peacock feathers or something like that. I can take my distress pad, pick that up, and get that dark blend and blend my color with that. But of course, as I continue to color, it's going to always, always, always go back to its original color. Now your ink pad is going to be your most concentrated color, all right? So that's going to give you more of the longest blend time. If you don't have the markers or the pads, but you wanted to incorporate it, let's say with Distress Stain, let's pick, where's that Dusty Concord again? So we can take that, we'll go in with dark purple because that will freak people out. We can go in with a light color, and I can pick this up, and that's going to give me a big purpley blend, but you can see that it quickly goes pretty light with that, and I'm just turning the marker because I want to work with all that color that's off the nib of it. And it'll continue to blend and continue to blend and continue to blend and continue to blend. But once that color is out, it's going to always go back to tumble glass. So you cannot contaminate these markers if you're using them with other distressed products. So you can use it marker to marker, marker to pad, marker to stain, but it's always going to go back to the original color that you started with, even though you're going to go and blend it. So don't worry about damaging these. Let's go on the flip side. So we know about picking up color. What if the markers that I have, I want to create, this is specialty stamping, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just showing you blend. So you could blend on gloss the same way or watercolor paper as well. Let's go the flip side. Let's say I wanted to color something sky or flower or something like that, and I didn't own all the colors. Or I did own all the colors, but I really like, let's say, the tone of the shades of a color. Like maybe I really love chip sapphire. Maybe I love this blue. So if I go in and color, I'm going to have this nice rich blue. Well, if I want to blend a color, I can just go in and take some water, spray it on my craft sheet, put the nib of this into the water, and what that's going to do is it's going to look as if it bleached out the pen, but it isn't. Now I'm going to go light back to dark. So now I'm reverse blending. So I've just put water in the nib, but now as I go back, it's going to always go back to that same intense chip sapphire.
Wow.
So you can color one way and go the other. So yeah, just dipping it in water, and you decide how much blend time you want. If you just put a little bit in there, that's going to just give you a shorter blend. But if you put a lot of it in there, you'll see the tip of it. It'll turn light, like you think, oh my gosh, what happened to my marker? You're just putting water in there, and you can't damage a water-based marker with water. It just gives you a longer blend time. So this is really good. So yeah, when I'm coloring, I can go in and just kind of color light, 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 and as I'm working, you know, if I'm coloring petals or something like that, you just kind of keep working around, but it's always going to go back once the water is out of this nib. It's always going to go back.
To the tip either.
No, it's back to my colored tip.
Wow.
Markers are just, they are your friend. Really. I think the more things you know what to do with them, and the less fear you have out of it, the better. Because you can blend your colors. So people that don't want to color with watercolor, just do marker to marker, you know, or marker to pad and do all your blending. Yeah, and work that way, just using your marker colors. I think it's a game changer. It does a lot. So, like on our snowman, let's just highlight this guy real quick. I could go in and take our picket fence, because remember our picket fence distress marker, this is going to be a white ink, not a gel ink. So I can take a dark surface, I can take a black tag or craft paper, and if you look at it, the ink itself is white, but usually when you first put it on the surface, it goes on clear, but then it's going to dry white. So it will allow me to go in and add some little highlights. If I want to go into that little snowman, right over that color, and you'll see that as it dries, it's going to go to white. And you won't contaminate that, same way the other markers, it's just going to work right into the nib and it'll go right back to white. But these big splotches of color, I can take my water brush, because this of course blends with water, and I can soften that out. So I can still take that little bit of white and just work that right into the rest of it. Gives it a nice little soft look. Pretty fun. Gives it a great little snowy effect. And you can keep working this and keep pulling this out as much as you want. It's fun.